Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Dr. Glenn Vo, and welcome to another edition of Nifty Thrifty Dentists podcast. I'm super excited to have my guest today. Now, this is somebody that everyone who's in the dental industry, healthcare industry, if you have a small business, you need to talk to this person. But before I introduce you to this person, I needed to ask you a couple of questions. Do you have a plan in place if financial disaster strikes? Let's say you become disabled, maybe get sick, possibly, suffer fatality. Do you have something to protect you? If your answer is no, then you want to meet this person. It is Ross Brannon. He is a financial advisor. Ross, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Glenn. Pleasure to be here.
So, you and I were just talking about something. We're just going to leave that. You were talking about a story. Because again, when people think about financial advisor, they have a limited view. Sometimes people are thinking oh, it's someone who tells me where to put money and whatnot. You specialize in making sure that we dentists and health professionals, we grow our wealth, but we are also protected. So you were going into a story about protection and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and let's just lead with that story.
Yeah. So we live in a world where crap happens. And, is the crap a minor fender bender, or is it a life-altering disability or fatality, as you just described?
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure a plan is bulletproof from life's events. I know a guy, let's leave it vague. He does well for himself, and he has a nanny, and the nanny was driving, and the nanny was parked, but in traffic, and a bicyclist who obviously wasn't watching because it could have easily been avoided, ran in and hit the vehicle, flew over the vehicle, and an ambulance had to come pick him up. Now, this guy wasn't driving the car, but the car is in his name.
Wow.
This guy makes a very good income, is worth a nice chunk of money. He is liable. This was in the state of Florida, where 1 out of every 2 billboards is a personal injury attorney.
Yeah.
So he called me and he said, "Hey, do I have an umbrella policy?" Now, I'm not a property and casualty agent. And I said, "Well, we talked about that and recommended that 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the copy of your auto policy. Did you not implement that?" And he's like, "Because I'm pretty sure you implemented it or something happened. So maybe it lapsed or something. We don't really know. We're still trying to piece all that all together." But he doesn't have an umbrella policy.
Wow.
Now, for those of you who don't know, personal umbrella policy is an excess liability policy that goes over your auto insurance and homeowners insurance. I kind of call it CYA insurance, if you get my drift.
Yeah.
And I'm not a property and casualty agent, but that's one of the things I'm looking at with people to make sure we're protected. We live in a very sue-happy society. And so we don't know what's going to happen in this scenario, but I want to make sure he's protected. And so that's just one piece of all the protection components out there.
And I'm glad you shared that story. The reason why I want to start with that story is a lot of times, especially, look, I'm a dentist and I know other dentists as well. There's going to be some other health professionals besides this watching this podcast as well. And the thing is look, okay, you have to have a certain amount of level of intelligence, right, to get through professional school, right? Dental school, professional school. You have to have a certain amount of like a work ethic, a good work ethic to get through it. And a lot of times that kind of works against us because we figure out we can, figure things out by ourselves. But Ross, let me ask you this. Why is it important to have a professional, like someone like yourself, who does this day in and day out, rather than just us trying to figure it out on our own?
Well, as a dentist, you go to school for a long time. If you're a physician, you go to school for a long time.
Yeah.
And you know a lot about a specific part of the human body.
Yeah.
So if you're a dentist, it's the mouth. If you're another specialty, it's something else. But it's hard for anybody to know everything about everything.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to have a trusted advisor who knows a lot about things specifically in the dental world and things dentists face, and the most efficient way to implement strategies that can benefit you and protect you.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's only so much that that you can learn on your own, right? And you have just used an example earlier about, hey, did you have that umbrella insurance? You're looking at every aspect there. What are some of the things, you've worked with so many dentists and other health professionals in your years as a financial advisor. What are the most common mistakes that we make, or some things that we don't realize that when you start working with someone, it's like, oh my gosh, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. Here's an opportunity here. Here's something that you should look at.
Well,
what are some of those things? I mean, again, I know this is not going to be all day. You can spend all day talking about them, but talk about the main ones.
If you have a teenage driver, title the vehicle in their name. That's a huge liability issue. My daughter's 15 years old. My umbrella policy just doubled in premium, and she's only 15. So depending on what state you're in, how you title your joint accounts is a big deal. In about 15 or 20 states, there's a certain account titling that is asset protected, but only a few states have it. Not all states don't have it. So it's important to do that. Certain assets are creditor protected. Certain legal document structures are critical when you draft your will and things of that nature. And so it's really important just to do things to protect yourself. Assume that you're going to get sued. Assume that a negative life event's going to happen, and hopefully it doesn't. But we have to make sure that a plan is bulletproof.
Yeah, no, again, you only know what you know, right? And you brought up something here. Every state is different, right? So again, it's not like, you have a buddy who's living in Florida, says, this is how I do it. And this other person maybe is living in California. You can't just assume that it's going to be the same. You just said it yourself that every state is different.
Yeah, it is. And so if you're in Florida, there's certain account titles that you should seriously consider. In California, that account titling isn't available, but there are other things you can do in California that can benefit you. And so you want to make sure that you're protected from that, from creditors, from lawsuits, but also from the tax man. There's certain ways that certain account types that you can put your money that are tax advantageous.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's everyone's, especially nowadays, that's everyone's favorite thing to talk about is the tax man. What are a couple of strategies that, that some people who are watching right now are not familiar with? And again, talk about how that could actually help as far as when we're talking about wealth creation and also.
Well, our biggest expense, no matter who we are, is taxes.
Oh, yeah.
So hands down. So my argument is that we should put as much money in tax-free accounts as possible. And that, I'm personally not the biggest fan of tax deferral. And so if you have a practice 401k, and you don't have a Roth, R-O-T-H, Roth option, that's something that needs to be addressed. Changing your 401k and seriously considering contributing to the Roth option. Depending on your health insurance situation, you might be eligible for a health savings account. That's $7,300 a year of tax deductible, growing tax-free dollars that turns into a Roth IRA at age 65. If you make upwards of $200,000, there's a scale where it's not just a set number, but it's around $200,000. Then you can't contribute to a Roth IRA. There is a backdoor Roth IRA provision that might be possible with proper plan, and they tried to get rid of that last year during legislative bills that were going through. Luckily, it didn't happen. It's only been around since 2010, I believe. It's not going to be around forever. And there's a couple other places you can put money tax-free that is, worth considering based on your situation. So and that's the one thing, is like everyone's situation is different. So your situation is different than my situation. So you shouldn't necessarily be doing what I'm doing. And a dentist in California is probably in a different situation than a dentist in Florida. Right. And so maybe that means their situation is, and their income is different. So they shouldn't do the same thing. So everybody's advice, or the advice given to everybody, needs to be really specific to their situation. I'm really not a big fan of general advice.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important. Again, that's why it's so important to work with a professional just such as yourself, because not every situation is the same. But also, you just said it yourself that things change all the time. Like this provision you were just talking about, they were thinking about getting rid of it. It's been around since 2010. It's still around, but who knows they'll eliminate it. And unless you are in this particular industry, the financial industry, you're not going to know these things, because if you're a dentist, you're working in someone's mouth. If you're a physician, you're taking care of, you're not paying attention to these things. So again, we work with other specialists, right? When it comes to healthcare, we refer out to different people. Well, this is just a different specialty, right? Ross is a specialist when it comes to financial advising. Now, I'm going to bring up Ross. I'm going to put you on the spot right now. I'm going to put you on the spot right now.
All right.
And this is there's this like this misconception out there, right? That, if you work with, one financial planner, there's all these products here that, they sell you these products and they say you need it, but you have a different approach, right? And I think you know where I'm heading here. I go to somebody and they're like, okay, yeah, you need X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, but he sells X, Y, and Z to everyone. It's kind of like a mishmash of products, right? So talk about why is it then that we are all fed these whole mishmash of products? Why is that? Explain to us why, and why is that not really advantageous? And you've already kind of talked about it, how everyone's different, but talk about the why. Like, why do they do that? Why do they come in and they sell me like 5 things, and they sell the next doctor 5 things, and they sell all the same thing? So talk about that.
I think sometimes you find people who are generalist and not specialist, and that's not necessarily bad. And you, in my world, you kind of have 3 wheels, or 3 different wheels is the right word, but 3 different segments of advisors. You have the investment-only advisors. They only do an investment accounts. You typically can't talk to them unless you have less than $250,000 of investable assets, if not more. Then you have the insurance-only people who will deal with the disability and life insurance, and that's needed too. And they tend to kind of like to fight against each other. And the reality is you need someone who deals with both, because both work better together. And that's why I'm agnostic to the strategy and the product. It just needs to be something that works for the client. I'm of the opinion that the best long-term plan is a series of well-executed short-term plans, because life change. My life will be different in 5 years. It was different 5 years ago than it is today. It's the same for everyone else. So it's really important that you get specific advice to your situation. Like, you might have all your stuff together, all your ducks in a row. You'd probably be the first person I met who did, but you might. Or you might be, kind of have your stuff all over the place and you need a lot of help. And either way, it's fine. It's just a matter of just letting someone coach you. And you really kind of have to be a little humble, have a humble attitude, and be coachable to let someone who deals in an area that you're not an expert in to give you advice.
And this is also, when before we jumped on this and we started recording this podcast, I was talking to Ross about kind of like his philosophy. And what you were telling me is that you actually like to kind of know your clients really well before you even propose anything. Like, you go through an extensive process before you propose anything. So why is that? Because again, we've been bombarded by different financial professionals in the past, and they're like, right off the bat, here's a little brochure, X, Y, and Z. But you don't take that approach. You want to talk to. So why is that so important to you? Why is that?
Everything has to be specific to your situation. So, like, I'm married with 5 kids. I have clients who are married and have no intention of having kids. What I recommend to them is going to be different than what I do for myself, because they have different goals and aspirations. And so everyone's situation is different, and you need to give specific advice about everyone's specific situation. To throw a broad brush, recommendation that everyone should own X or everyone should do Y, I feel like is just wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of a disservice to whoever you're talking to, because it might not even apply to them.
Right, exactly. It's like everybody should do this in the dental world. Well, I mean, besides floss and brush your teeth and don't eat Snickers bars every day, everyone probably shouldn't do the same thing. But so it's just important to really get to know the client, to help them to get an understanding of what their dreams and desires are. Because my goal is to partner with someone to help them achieve their dreams and goals. I'm not in it for a transaction. I'm in it for long-term relationships with people.
So let me ask you this, because again, you were talking about flossing just a while ago, and I've always thought that this was such a cool name. But you have something called a financial flossing session. Is that what that is? What do you mean?
Yeah. So I have a financial flossing podcast and a financial flossing session. It's really, I do a lot of work with dentists. I have a very, very dental heavy practice.
Yeah.
And so it's really just it's a conversation. It's to get to know you, find out where you're at, what moving parts you have going on. Are you an associate? Do you own your own practice?
Mm-hmm.
Are you 50 years old? Are you 35? Are you married with 3 kids? Are you divorced? Are you trying to sell your practice? Are you trying to buy another practice? What's going on in your world? So the advice I give to my client who owns 2 practices and makes $1.5 million a year is different than the advice I give to my client who makes 1 practice and earns $300,000 a year. Mm-hmm. They both have great situations, but it's completely different scenarios. And so I have to get an understanding of what's going on in the world, where they're trying to go, so that I can give the proper recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll talk about how you can get in on that financial flossing session. Okay. There's a place you can book that, but I want to kind of talk about some other things that you offer as well. And I just thought it was just so unique, and it makes sense, especially how you position your firm, right? Obviously you want dentists to be able to grow their wealth, to protect their wealth too. And protection is key. If you go to Ross's website, you see protection everywhere because things happen, right? And there's a couple of products that actually you offer. And again, talk about why you kind of incorporate that into your company. And that is life insurance and disability insurance. Obviously you do financial advising, but you have these 2 products as well. Talk about why is that so important?
Well, I personally own as much disability insurance as I own. And I personally own as much life insurance as I own, because the purpose of insurance is to replace what was lost. Yeah. It's my opinion that the greatest resource that you and I and our listeners have is the ability to earn an income. They spend an inordinate amount of time acquiring that skill to practice dentistry. They spend an inordinate amount of money. And so I personally know 4 healthcare providers who are on disability claim, one of which you and I know, Glenn, and every single one of them, if you knew them, if you met them, you would not know they're disabled. Disability doesn't mean you're in a wheelchair. It doesn't mean you're in a coma, but they just had a situation where they couldn't practice, whether it was a dentist, an orthopedic surgeon, a chiropractor. All those are real examples of people that I know. And the statistics, last I read, about 1 in 4 people will acquire a disability during their working years. Fortunately, most disabilities are not permanent. But if I lose the ability to earn income, if you lose the ability to earn income, if any of our listeners lose the ability to earn income, it could have a devastating effect. Yeah. So we want to make sure we protect that. It's really important that you own the right type of disability product, as the right contract language, and those are conversations that we'll have if someone reaches out to me and schedules a meeting.
And it's all about being able to sleep at night, right? So again, you never know, right? You never know, and if you have that protection, and it just helps you sleep at night. And let's just talk about this another thing too. This is again, like, I am always shocked when I find out, like, there's a doctor that I know, there's a dentist I know that doesn't have life insurance, right? And again, look, I get it, right? You're living life. You're doing all these amazing things.
No one wants to think they're going to need it.
No one wants to think. Everyone thinks they're immortal there. But again, you got to think about protecting it. So talk about that. Talk about that as well. And talk about how, there's also, when we talk about life insurance, there's so many other products. There's so much other coverage and all these different things that you would need someone like a Ross to explain. But talk about why that's so important, obviously. And then what other products within the life insurance kind of spectrum there is.
Well, there's obviously different types of life insurance, and that's a fairly technical conversation that we would have with a one-on-one with someone. But the purpose of life insurance is to replace an income. It's to replace what was lost. So if I died tomorrow, the life insurance would hopefully recreate my income. So having the proper conversation about the proper amount. I found few people have ever had an advisor talk to them about the appropriate amount of life insurance. And so that's important right there, especially if you have kids. But if you own a practice with partners, do you have a buy-sell agreement? In the event something happens, and is that buy-sell agreement funded? And you would fund it with life insurance because, if you think you're going to fund it with cash flow, I'll help you go through the math on that. It's not nearly as fun of a math conversation as you think it is. And so, owning life insurance to fund a buy-sell agreement is important. And so, protecting your family in the event of a negative life event. Obviously, none of us think we're going to die. And I don't think anyone who did die really thought they were going to die early either. But we probably all know someone who has. I probably know half a dozen friends of mine from high school or college who are no longer with us. Yeah. And so I would have never guessed that, as I'm sure they wouldn't have either. But it's just really important to have. And I think life insurance is probably one of the most misunderstood financial products in America today. I mean, there are some types of life insurance that aren't really great. And then there's some types of life insurance that can be used, if used properly, can be good tools.
Yeah, and again, it's just like for the amount of, there's a product for everyone, right? But the investment you put in there, the investment you put in is so small compared to what you would get if something were to happen, right? And it's all about being able to sleep at night, right? You're covered with, if you have a disability, if something were to happen to you, that your family's taken care of. Things that we don't want to think about, but think about like the type of insurance that we already have just by practicing. We have malpractice insurance. We hope we never ever need to use it, but we're glad that we have it, right? And it just makes sense. And again, this is all ties into what Ross does, right? He helps us not only grow our wealth, but to protect our wealth. Okay, so if someone wanted to just reach out to you, like what's the best way? Is it signing up for the financial flossing session?
Yeah, so
through those things.
So there's a couple of things. I'm pretty transparent. You can obviously sign up for a financial flossing session on my bookings link, which we'll have in this. You can call me directly on my cell phone. I don't care. That's 850-566-7999, 850-566.
Hey, and if you don't believe that's his number, when you're done watching this, call the man right away. Or shoot him a text message.
850-566-7999. And obviously you can click the link, set up a call with me. Super easy. And we'll just have a kind of a get to know you call. I'm not a fit for everyone and everyone's not a fit for me, and that's okay. And so we'll just see if it makes sense for us to have another conversation after we hop on the phone.
And you know what? Here's the thing. For the small amount of time you'll take just to talk to Ross, I promise you, you're going to walk away. And I did when we first started talking. He brought up a couple of things that I didn't think about. So it's going to be very productive. And that's just how he does business there. So Ross, before we log off here, what is something that you just want to share with everyone in our community? Again, we have mainly dentists, but there's a few other health professionals as well. What is one thing that you want to leave with everyone before we log off here?
Yeah, everyone talks about products and strategies, but I think the most important thing for any of us and all of us to do financially is to save as much money as possible. Mm-hmm. We like to talk about rate of return because it's kind of sexy, quite frankly, but we can't control it. The one thing we control is our rate of savings. And I can show some calculators that are pretty powerful in that regard. So the more money you save, the better you'll be. So I just always encourage people to save more money.
I love it. Ross, thank you so much for jumping on. Guys, I'll have the links for his booking calendar. Hey, sign up for that financial flossing session. But the man put out his number, and look, it's his number because, I just looked at my cell phone, so it is his number. Call him, shoot a text message. If you want to know something right away, shoot a text message. Here's the thing. You only know what you know, and it's always good to have someone like Ross in your corner. So Ross, thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks, Glenn. I really appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you guys later.